I'll tell you in my first startup what happened. We had never done startup before. Three of us who were senior executives at established companies decided to get together and start a company, form a startup. Now we had some initial money from one of our potential partners in the future, and kind of emotion, even though we were at different, what should I say, different expertise level. We all in out of emotion, hey, let's do this equal, as most of the founders think. And I'll tell you that was beginning of our many problems we faced in our journey. And so one thing I am really certain about is never act out of emotion, and it is never equal, because as the startup take a life of its own. See, initially 2 guys, 3 guys sitting in Starbucks, making a wonderful idea, coming up with a wonderful idea. That's kind of how it works, right? In the beginning. But then what happens after that is that one guy takes that idea forward and comes up with a beautiful, assuming it's a technical startup architecture. Many of the startups I did were highly technical. We did a infrastructure related product. So one guy is putting his life and soul into it to come out with a new kind of architecture, a new kind of way of building something, and other guy is bringing so many customers, and the third guy, he's feeling lost. So what do you do with him? Because what you have done in the beginning is very difficult to undo once the moment company gets funded. So in our case, same thing happened. We all were kind of, did 1 by 3 equity. And then as we got some employees, we carved out some stock options for those employees. So of course, let's say you did 33% each in the beginning, and then you carved out 20% stock option pool. And that of course came out equally from each one of us. And we gave it to some early employees who trusted us, had confidence in us to join us. And then came the investors, and investors of course diluted us, let's say some X%. And now investors are raising question, hey, this guy is more valuable than this guy. Why do you have to? But I mean, of course, they usually what they do, the way they do it is they don't like to interfere among the founder dynamics, because they have other problems to take care of. Why should they get into it? But they do point out, and then you feel it yourself. I mean, you say that, man, I mean, I'm bringing all the money, or I'm bringing all the product knowledge, and the third guy is not doing much, and he knows this. So that created more insecurities in him, and that all that stuff happens in that. I mean, it's not a. So my advice to all the founders who are out there, that not everybody's going to like this advice. Wait till you actually have financing options available to you before you divide the equity. Or the way you can do it is take 50% of the initial pool, divide among 2-3 people equally, and then keep the remaining that is based on what somebody does. The guy who actually convinces some investors to bring in money or does the first MVP, they get extra 10%, right? And I think that way you can justify. I would advise all the founders, first, don't be emotional. Don't decide on being, this guy is my friend for a long time, I have to give him equal. No. In the life journey of a startup, there are no two equal founders. Very rarely I have found that. 1 or 2 guys always have better contribution towards building the startup than the third guy or the second guy. It's never equal. And you should have a mechanism in place early on to be able to reward incentive. That's what startups are for. Rewarding incentive, rewarding hard work, rewarding innovation, right? So you should keep some pool available for that. And the third thing is that if you pivot, you decide to change your future direction and all, be ready to buy out one of the founders. So early on, you can put in this term that if a founder leaves, or if a founder is thought not to be beneficial to the company's future run, and let's say other 2 founders of the board, or however you kind of define that, feels that this person is no longer needed, the rest of the founders should be able to buy his shares at some predetermined price. And that, I think, if you can take care of that, you can avoid a lot of issues. See, founders, they have founder stock. So which means they're not options, they're founder stocks. They're granted, because the benefit of a founder stock is that at that time the value is very low. So 0.001. You can determine, a typical, and I'm talking more from my experience in US, but I think India is more or less similar. But India is more complicated in kind of formation of the company. US is very, very easy. But still take some legal help. Take help in India, take help of a company secretary, to do these things, because you want to make sure that these things are tightly written and there is no ambiguity later on. And these days, of course, there are many startup savvy lawyers available to you who can help you put this together, your stock option plan, your stock grant plan, your founders agreement. Put all those things in the agreement. And the vesting part is also part of the agreement. So typically founders have stock, which means you already have a stock. It's not an option, but still you have a vesting schedule of 4 years. That stock grant will vest to you, will be given to you, will be available to you to exercise over 4-year time period. Now many people have started doing reverse vesting, they call it. It's granted to you and then reverse, vesting is reversed, right? And like that, I mean, there are many terms like that, and now you can Google these terms and or ask your startup savvy lawyers. I mean, that's best is stock grant is given upfront, or vesting happens over time. That's called reverse vesting. That's how you do for startups.